So we're going to look at some of the writings of Curtis Yarvin. Again, this is a guy that J.D. Vance and Elon Musk and a lot of Silicon Valley titans like a lot. First, let's look and see what Kyle Kulinski has to say about him. Kyle Kulinski brought up Curtis Yarvin as he was talking about how Sam Harris had been really critical of Elon Musk.
If you really want to know what the deeper purpose is, go read about Curtis Yarvin, because that guy is sort of like their ideological thought leader, right? And what he wants to do is set up these like libertarian dictatorship fiefdoms around the country where you're ruled by corporate overlords, right? And that, I think, ideally is exactly what a guy like Elon Musk wants. And to snuggle up to Trump, he feels like maybe we'll be able to make some of this stuff happen. So anyway, man, he went in, and as I'm sure all you know, MAGA on Twitter was losing it and hating on Sam Harris, and Elon's little pathetic simps were hating on Sam Harris. Again, I have many disagreements with Sam Harris, but this ain't one of them.
Okay, so he starts out by saying, the essential inspiration for Patchwork is the observation that the periods in which human civilization has flowered are the periods in which it has been most politically divided. Okay, he talks about how small is good, local is good, different is good. My question, and potentially he will cover this at some point, but my question is, if you were to divide the United States into all of these like patchwork states, what happens if you have China or some other government invade one specific patchwork? Are they all going to band together and work together to fight off that larger threat? So scrolling down, it says, we've had enough. We're done with the present system of government. We want to reboot. He highlights that our anarchy isn't very realistic, that it's basically impossible. So he says that patchwork, so again, these patchwork states, this is a new operating system for the world. He highlights that it could be installed basically on a smaller scale. Talks about innovations and sovereignty are dangerous. So it's more prudent to start small. So that would be like maybe just in the United States. Okay, right here, he highlights a patchwork is any network consisting of a large number of small but independent states. To be precise, each state's real estate is its patch. The sovereign corporate owner, i.e. the government of the patch of its realm, at least initially, each realm holds one and only one patch. In practice, this may change with time, but the realm patch structure is at least designed to be stable. Here we see a part of his writings on patchworks. He is really positive about it. He says, but patchwork is something new. It will not feel like the past. It will feel like the future, the past, that is the democratic past, will feel increasingly gray, weird, and scary. So it seems utopian that he's indicating this patchwork system is going to be far better than the system today. Okay, he highlights reasons like why he thinks it will be better. Okay, in the future, the fact that once you would probably be attacked if you went to Central Park at night will seem preposterous. The idea that millions of random people who were not even authorized to be in the country were wandering around driving gigantic SUVs at triple-digit speeds after 10 or 15 drinks and murdering random musicians on motorcycles will seem as weird as the idea that a pride of wild lions would march into Carnegie Hall mid-symphony, close all exits, and systematically slaughter the audience. So it's indicating immigrants here. It talks about people not authorized to be in the country. I'm going to question how many people there really are that aren't authorized to be in the United States that are driving around in huge SUVs, driving triple-digit speeds after 15 drinks. It seems like he's kind of creating a straw man of immigrants in this scenario. Are there potentially some that drive SUVs and drive quick and drink? Sure, but also there's people that are authorized to be here that are doing the same. So yeah, kind of a weird idea by Curtis Yarvin. And as I read a lot of this, I'm questioning if he really has the same, if he's at the same level that those who were writing the Federalist Papers and the Constitution were at. Is he at a similar level to Madison and Hamilton? Is he some intellectual genius that understands human nature far better than these guys did? So far, I'm pretty skeptical of that. Okay, so in describing patchworks, he's saying, graffiti will be a matter for the museums, as will gangs, of course. The streets will have no cars or very few. They will be safe at night. They will be bright and full of lively, happy people. Wine will be cheap. Restaurants will be unregulated. And fine Eskimo marijuana will be sold. So that sounds like a pretty nice description here. But there's the question, like, is that utopian? Is that really going to be what a patchwork would be like? Okay, he says, these kinds of descriptions apply to the kind of patch I would like to live in. You may prefer to live in a gritty urban patch, which is corrupt, dirty, dangerous, and generally difficult to live in. So he's highlighting that that's how the country is right now: dirty, dangerous, corrupt. Who is going to be running these patch states exactly? Some have argued that he wants Elon Musk to run them. If we're under the impression that Elon Musk is not corrupt, that's definitely a stretch. He will kick people off of Twitter that criticize him. And as a billionaire, he's pouring just obscene amounts of money he was pouring obscene amounts of money into the presidential race. He spreads a lot of misinformation. So this idea that this patchwork system would be so much better than what it is now, I find hard to believe. And with Curtis Yarvin, the only reason why we're even paying attention to this blog is because there's really influential, powerful people that like this stuff and subscribe to this. Okay. Talks about basically a reason like why this hasn't happened today in Manhattan, what he's described as the patchwork. He says the problem is that Manhattan is not the interests of Manhattan. Capital, in short, is being squandered. In the patchwork, this is most unlikely to happen. So he's basically arguing that in our country, it's like the capital isn't going toward the best interests of Americans. He highlights that there's historical and political reasons why democratic governments are a mess. He says he won't go into them today. Okay, so here he's getting into some of the key ideas. So he's saying, enough anecdotes and generalities. Let's take a harder engineering look at the anatomy of patchwork. The basic engineering problem is, while one can fantasize about the way in which the system should be governed, how will it be governed? The entire problem is described as one of security. Okay, so he's bringing up the idea, like, is it going to be stable? If we set it up in some state, will it remain in that state? Stability and security are the same thing if the structure of authority changes in any authorized way. He highlights here, so he's saying that the creators of the Constitution says that they were not ignorant, they weren't inexperienced, like he's giving them a level of credit. He says the government they designed diverged immediately and irreversibly from the envelope in which they intended it to operate. So he's saying the government basically, is not what they wanted it to be. I don't know what he's claiming to maybe justify that. Let's keep going. Okay, anything like a patchwork can merge into a single centralized state. It can degenerate into an asymmetric form in which one state dominates the others. It can split into factions which fight a civil war for the world. Individual states can turn evil and try to turn others evil. History tells us all kinds of awful stuff can happen and probably will. I have to question if a lot of Yarvin's views come from his experience living in the San Francisco area, where there's a lot of homelessness and where there's also a lot of crime, and many argue that they're too soft on crime. So he highlights the importance of security here. So he says, first, security is a monotonic desideratum. I think that's how it's pronounced. No such thing as too secure. Okay, so security and liberty do not conflict. Security always wins. Okay, as Robert Peel put it, the absence of crime and disorder is the test of public safety. So he wants there to be no crime, no disorder. So he doesn't like homelessness, doesn't like soft on crime legislation. He highlights this idea that anything like the modern state, the risk of private infringement on private liberties far exceeds the risk of public infringement. So he's saying no cop ever stole his bicycle. So he's arguing that like private corporations infringing on people's rights or liberty, that happens far less than like someone from the public doing that. He's saying this will be even more true in a patchwork, in which realms compete for business on the basis of customer service. So part of his idea with patchworks is it's like people can just leave and they can choose to go to a different patchwork state that is theoretically better. And so he argues that there's going to be a very high emphasis on security, the same way that in a business, like gyms have lockers that you can put your stuff in, right? If a gym doesn't have a locker, people may not want to go to that gym because their items may not be as secure. Okay, he talks about, let's separate our security overview into two parts: internal management of realms and the relationship between realms. Goes into the idea of a patchwork is a business corporation. Its capital is the patch it's sovereign over, and so that's like the real estate. The realm makes money or it profits by making its real estate as valuable as possible, whether it's Manhattan or a ranch in Oklahoma. So basically, people that have real estate within a patch, they're going to want that patch to do extremely well. Okay, even the oceans can and should be divided into patches. How should realms be administered? The answer is simple. A realm is a corporation, sovereign corporation. It says the art of corporate design is not a mystery. The corporation is owned and controlled by its anonymous shareholders. Okay, talks about shareholders select a chief executive to whom all employees report. So the idea is that these patch states are going to have basically shareholders and then like a CEO essentially. Okay, and whose decisions are final? So the CEO has final decisions. In no cases do they make management decisions directly. It is at least probable that this joint stock design maximizes corporate efficiency. If there existed a more efficient structure, if firms were more productive when managed not by a committee but by an executive, or by the collective design decisions of their customers, or employees by separate legislative judiciary branches, we would know. So he's arguing basically the corporate structure is the most efficient structure for governing that exists, that it's more efficient than like the branches of government with legislative, judicial. Someone would have found a way to construct a firm on this design, and it would have outcompeted the rest of the old world. In fact, I think one of the most plausible explanations of why the Industrial Revolution happened in England, not in China or Roman Empire, was that the latter two never evolved anything like the joint stock company. So China and Rome didn't have like corporations or joint stock companies in a similar way to England. Our great difficulty, though, is that history records nothing quite like a sovereign joint stock company, because the closest examples were chartered companies of the classical era. Okay, it talks about realm or sovereign corporation. It's a modified version of monarchy. So these patchwork states, if I'm understanding correctly, is arguing that they would be like modified versions of monarchies. Okay, they assure that the overall direction of the realm will always be strong and responsible, at least responsible in a financial sense. Joint stock company cannot do anything like a weak monarch of the classical era. Okay, realms will recruit their executives from the same talent pool large companies draw from now. So if I'm understanding that, it's like top CEOs today, they would be essentially like the leaders of these patchwork states. Yeah, highlighting that there wouldn't be like constitutional monarchies that are watered down monarchies. If the joint stock realm is like a monarchy, it is like a true absolute divine right monarchy. And he's highlighting that most people probably don't have an understanding of what divine right monarchy is. My understanding of it is that it's the idea that kings were chosen by God, and everyone believes that. And so you can't question the king. It's like if you question the king, you're questioning God. Okay, I'm going to cut off right here, and so I'll do a part 2. So again, this is from his website. It's called unqualifiedreservations.org. And this is Patchwork Positive Vision Part 1. And so we're going to be kind of going through, I'll do multiple videos on this. Again, we want to understand what Curtis Yarvin has been writing, because this has been very influential for people like Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance. Go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel to have more videos on history, politics. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. It's RationalPolitics25, and I'm going to start trying to expand into TikTok a little bit more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.